because today we are going to be talking about how to get into the media, build relationships with journalists to give us lots of PR coverage. And I've got special guests here, Michelle and Christian Ewan from Right on Time, who are going to share some of their tips and advice on how to access, but also build relationships with journalists so that we can get a bit of coverage and on print, digitally, or shares on social media with the journalists who can actually increase our reach. So do you want to give us a quick introduction to who you are and how you can help us all?
We will,
we can. We'll do our signature intro. So I'm Michelle Ewan.
And I'm Christian Ewan.
And together we are Right on Time, and we are former journalists. So we've worked in real life newsrooms, which is the basis of all the information that we share on guest expert sessions such as this. And we now have our own PR agency, a very proudly Northern-based PR agency. And what we do is help business owners like you figure out what makes them newsworthy and support them to take their first steps to getting into the press.
Absolutely. And then when we've established that, then we like to help people pitch to the press with confidence as well. So that's us in a nutshell.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant, because I know a lot of people are quite nervous when it comes to the press, or they just think, well, I've got nothing to say. Why would
we hear that a lot. We hear that one a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not true.
It's not true. We yet to meet a single person who hasn't got at least one interesting story to share, but we understand that it's hard to figure out what that story could look like when it's you and you're kind of trying to see your business through the eyes of a journalist. And one of the challenges we see a lot of people experience is they kind of want to advertise themselves, and they want to advertise programs and courses and products and services, and it tips more into an advert, which is a real turn off for journalists. So it's learning to kind of step back away from that temptation and just have real confidence that you do have a story that's newsworthy enough to share.
Absolutely. And in sharing your news story, that's going to give people an opportunity to actually get to know, like, and trust you, get to learn a little bit more about you, the person behind the business. And then once that relationship's been established, they can then go and have a look and find out about your business offering. So they're kind of learning a little bit about the person to begin with oftentimes, and then they go away, look more into what you offer, what you're about, why you do what you do. And then the two things actually come together in a really nice way. So what we don't want is people being told by newspapers to go and buy an advert for a lot of money. We don't want that. We want you to be looking at what a good news story looks like and actually getting in and being there on merit in terms of giving the editorial team at a newspaper or a magazine or an outlet, give them what they need, and then they can put the focus on you, shine that old spotlight.
Because it's very expensive, isn't it, editorial? And actually, sorry, not editorial, very expensive adverts.
Yeah.
But actually, you can do really well. And we were chatting earlier, weren't we? But Anne Gerling, who's one of our members of the Social Flock, and she's just recently been in the Metro, and she just thought she'd got nothing interesting to say whatsoever. But a journalist actually picked up one of her posts on social media, contacted her and went, oh, could we write about this? And it went out on the Metro a couple of weeks ago. It ended up trending, so it was a trending one. And her social media, her Facebook group that she wanted to double in numbers by April, she literally more than doubled her numbers of a group overnight. Now it's had so many interactions. They're now putting her into print.
That's incredible.
Isn't that just a dream, though? I mean,
amazing result.
And you can think of how icky it would have felt if you kind of went seeking coverage to say, oh, I've got this Facebook group and I'm trying to double my numbers by the end of the month. Whereas what's happened there is quite naturally, because that there's been an interesting, engaging post on social media that the reporters clocked and thought, that could be makings of a good piece in the paper. We've got that beautiful journey where we've accomplished the objective of growing the group size, but we've done it in a really authentic, newsworthy way. I just want to say, if anyone's thinking, well, why should I bother with the press? I'm doing stuff on social media, and that's great. And I've got my newsletter, and that's working for me. I've got email marketing,
dedicated following.
Following. It's always good to think about numbers when it comes to the press. So, for example, the Metro newspaper, you might not realise, it's the second biggest newspaper in the entire country. And they, generally speaking, have 26 million views over the course of any given month. So if you're thinking, you know, I really want to get more eyeballs on my business, I want more people to know who I am, what I do, why I do it, then the press is a really good vehicle for that.
Yeah, I mean, something like the Metro there as a result is just amazing. And in terms of immediate scale up visibility, yeah, you're hitting tens of millions of people with that story. So for anybody who wants to have that opportunity to think, well, you know, I could have that happen for me, you have to be able to throw your hat into the ring. You know, you have to be there sharing an idea, you know, putting a post out there, because you never ever know who's looking. You never know who's looking. You never know who's absorbing it. What could be quite a, you know, a nice little bit of information to share for you is fantastic, but who knows the hidden depths of it until it's actually out there. And in that example there that Bex has shared, that's then become a national piece of news coverage where, as Michelle mentioned, that objective as well with the group was achieved. So onwards and upwards, and I'm really, really proud and really pleased for that individual that they've been able to do that for themselves. Amazing. Really, really well done.
And I think, I think that resonates with what you were saying earlier, is that it's not about sell, sell, sell. And this post wasn't about that. It was a lifestyle post. And, you know, she's over 70 and she's transformed her life. She's really fit. And it was all about, you know, I think what the headline was something like, I'm over 70 but feel 40 because I do this one thing every week. Something quite catchy. But they'd seen her and seen what an inspiration she was on social media. She wasn't posting about products, how she can help. She wasn't selling stuff. She was actually telling a story. So you've got some amazing tips, haven't you, of how do we capture the attention of these journalists on our social media? Because it's not easy, is it?
It's not easy, but it's not impossible. And if you, if you take one thing away from this session, it's really thinking this is an achievable thing for you. Because I think in days gone by, journalists have felt very remote and inaccessible. And there's a lot of anxiety attached with, back in the olden days, picking up the phone and telephoning a journalist. And it's like, oh my goodness, this is a journalist. What am I going to say to them? And it can feel really stressful and anxiety inducing. Whereas social media gives us that really nice opportunity to sit and think about, you know, how can I craft something in a personable way and, you know, look back over what I've written and make sure I'm comfortable with it. So it takes some of the sting and the stress out of communicating with journalists. And it also, I think, helps us to see them as real people. Because a lot of journalists, whilst they use their social media platforms to write, requests for help, so they might use the hashtag journo request.
Yeah, very popular one.
And say, you know, I'm working on this particular feature. I need somebody to interview who is an appropriate case study.
These are the requirements that I'm looking for that person to fit the bill.
Yeah. You know? If you can, that's a really good way of getting your foot in the door with them. But also, a lot of the journalists, they'll talk about their everyday life. So they might talk about the fact that they've got children or pets, or they're going on holiday, or have got some life opportunity or a challenge. And if you can strike up a conversation with them that feels natural and feels authentic, then that's a really good basis for moving that conversation on further down the line when you might potentially have a story idea that could be of interest to them. Yeah,
most definitely. And I think the key thing there, as Michelle mentioned, is about it feeling like a natural, authentic dialogue. You know, what we don't want to be doing is, for instance, seeing a journalist sharing a little bit of information about themselves. You know, it could be about parenthood, for instance, and then somebody writing as their very first post, oh, I'm a parent too. You know, here's my product. Why don't you write about it for me? You know, that doesn't feel authentic. So in terms of what you do need to be thinking about is actually building up a rapport with that person as you would anybody. So, you know, if you were attending like a networking event or something like that, you know, you would want to spend some time with that person, maybe see them over a number of occasions before you maybe start to, you know, talk about other things. So journalists are no different. We're human beings. We've got the same challenges in life as everybody else has got. We've got the same goals in life, the positive things, the not so, in terms of, we all have to embrace things that come our way. And I think just speaking about it in a way that is designed to connect, to show a little bit of who you are as a person, but then for you to gain some knowledge of them, it just feels like a really organic and a really natural thing. And you'll find over time that you may start to have things in common. It may even be stuff that you didn't even realize. It could even be, the same taste in music. It could be all kinds of things. And then you start to kind of be aware of one another a little bit more, be in each other's world a little bit more, but you're doing it all through the power of social media. So it really is quite a powerful platform, and something that can definitely be leveraged. And I would encourage anyone today to really start thinking about doing that. But we're going to be here to help you, to get you some tips and get you going with that if you're a little bit concerned about how to start.
And kind of just to give you to quantify that a little bit for you. So Felicity Hannah, who's a producer and presenter over on BBC Moneybox.
Yes, Radio 4, isn't
it? Radio 4, I think she's on. She shared that typically in any given day, she'll receive over 100 emails with people contacting her for ideas for the programme, for the story, wanting to be featured. And she said the very first thing that she does is read through the sender names and pick out people that she's actually got an established relationship with, because when she's only got a finite amount of time, she wants to make good choices about how to spend it. So if she's built up know, like and trust with people, she's going to look out for their pitches more so than somebody she's never heard of, which is only natural. And a lot of those people who will be top of the list will be people she's regularly communicating with on social media. She's a big fan of X, so you should definitely go and give Felicity
Twitter.
I was trying to be good, you see.
Twittering old money. Yeah, we're trying to be all current. Yeah, X it is. Yeah, we still know it as Twitter. Yeah.
And I would say of all the platforms, the one that most journalists tend to use and hang out on is X, or for the artist formerly known as Twitter. So certainly I would be prioritizing X over some other different types of platforms. That's not to say that Instagram, TikTok and LinkedIn are other good ways to reach journalists, but because of the immediacy of X and because of trending topics, it does tend to be the preferred platform, I would say, from my relationships of working with journalists.
And certainly as regards the hashtag journal request, it's pretty much an X-centered call out. And you will find that a lot of different journalists, different disciplines, different types of outlets, they will be using that platform to put those calls out just to say, can so-and-so help me with this type of a story? And as I mentioned earlier, they will then give very specific requirements of what they're looking for. So if you fit that bill, why not reply?
Yeah, have the confidence to reply.
It's funny, isn't it? Because X, Twitter, I still call it Twitter.
I do.
I'm a rebel.
I'm a rebel.
Yeah. But basically, I know when I used to work at Nomad Games, we were a small video games company, and I was given no marketing budget. And I used to, a bit like what you said, Michelle, I used to email journalists about our games, get absolutely nowhere because they didn't know me. So then I started using LinkedIn. And if they weren't active on LinkedIn, I started interacting and following them on X, Twitter. It was definitely Twitter in those days. Started following them and just interacting with their content, replying, responding. And then eventually they'd follow us back. But they'd follow us back not because I was telling them all about our products and services, because I completely changed our content, and it was more about sharing news stories, stuff we were doing with charity, going behind the scenes in the business, and really talking about the stories in the business rather than products and services. Because like you said earlier, they're not interested in what you've got to sell. Everybody wants to sell the stuff. They're actually interested in those sort of personal interest pieces that people want to read about, aren't they? And I think that's what people forget about.
Absolutely.
And I think also letting go of the idea initially, and I will say initially, that press coverage has to be 100% about your business and what it does. I think getting into the habit of being featured in the press may be about something that's adjacent to your business or has some kind of link but might not be 100% about it.
Charity, for instance, would be a good example of that.
Charity or personal interests that you have, or anything like that, just to get into the practice of being featured in the press. Because once you have established that relationship, then that gives you an opportunity further down the line to steer the conversation more towards your speciality or your particular area of expertise. And I've certainly seen that in myself. And the Metro, it is one of my favourite ones to do because they do so often put calls out for stories. But there was somebody, one of the reporters was just shared a picture of a ridiculous house in London that was like £2,000 and you couldn't have swung a cat round in it. Like, it was like one of them where the sink is like also the bath, and like
it's just, an exaggeration.
And the toilet,
and the toilet.
And
I just wrote back and I was like, oh my goodness, it's like for that kind of money you could get like a 3-bed house in Warrington where I live. And the journalist actually DM'd me and said, I want to write about that. Then let's write about the fact that, for the market value in London, you can get this up north. And we ended up doing an article that was over 1,000 words long. They put a link in the article to our company, which was absolutely fantastic for SEO. And then I had the journalist's name and contact details, a bit of a relationship going, and I could then build on that and then subsequently go back to them with other feature ideas that were more aligned with what I did specifically want to talk about. So just having those initial experiences of press coverage or involvement with the press, it does help to grow the confidence, and you can then actually steer it more in the direction that you ultimately want it to head in.
Most definitely. And I think, again, with that example, that was just it was just stating an opinion. There was no sort of agenda to it or anything. It was just a case of, oh really, £2,000 to live in that space. And then just something like that, it starts a conversation and you just don't know where it will lead to. And I think sometimes it is just about having that confidence just to think, well, I've got an opinion here that I'd like to share, as long as it's done, politely, as long as it's done in a way that is going to connect. We don't want you to be doing things in a way that will seek to alienate. We want to be part of things and we want to be considered. As long as you're happy to do that, then, go ahead and do it. Because ultimately, as I mentioned a little earlier, you just don't know where it's going to go. You don't know who it's going to land with or the way it will land. And I think it's really, really nice that people start to learn a bit more about you as a person. What makes you tick? What's the why behind the what? You might be doing a business day in, day out, but why do you do it? Does it come from a place in the heart? Are you on a mission to achieve something that's actually more person-centered than business-orientated, and the business is actually just a vehicle to get to where you want to go? But it might be that it's coming from somewhere really deep in here, something that you might have been on a journey to have done for many, many years and realized an ambition that has taken you time to get there. People are only going to know about that if you actually lift the curtain and talk about it a little bit. So having these conversations through social, getting involved in conversations with journalists is the way forward, most definitely.
Yeah.
Give yourself the permission to do it.
And I think it's just really important, isn't it, as well, is about building those relationships. And what you just said, Christian, about lifting that curtain on your sort of business, but on your social media as well, and making sure that people do know who it is behind the business. People don't these days want to interact with a nameless, faceless business, do they? They want to interact with the people behind it, what drives them, what's their passion, and what are they interested in. And I think that's just a really, really, really important part. And by doing that on your social media, you're attracting that attention, but also those journalists that might be following you, because you're nurturing those relationships, are going to see that, aren't they? And potentially see a story that you've not noticed. And
that happens. That's such a brilliant point, because that happens so much. You can put something out there that it could be just a mild point of interest to you, something that you feel it's got enough, I suppose, substance to share it, but you don't know potentially the depths of where it could go. And it's only when a person who's in the trade, who does this for a living, who writes stories, who you know, journalists enjoy getting to know people. You know, that's
we're very nosy.
Nosy people, stop being afraid. We're doing it in a way where it's
Useful to know.
actually, you know, it's there to amplify the subject, but it's also there for you as a writer, as a creator, to flex your own abilities and do something that is, you know, in service to what you do. So I think sometimes we can put something out, but not really fully appreciate the potential of it. So until you begin to do that, you just don't know where it could go. And I think there's something really exciting about that, because it's a great way as well of bringing other people into your world. Yes, you know, we are there and we're talking today about attracting a journalist to your story, but what about potential clients as well? What about people who you could end up maybe thinking about collaborating with? What if potential partners, partner agencies, stakeholders, maybe if you're writing about something charity related, would there be another person who supports that charity who gets in touch with you because you've got that shared interest? So it's always about just having the confidence to let people know a little bit more about you. And then that way, people then can just learn to build a relationship that I think feels really, really organic. The business stuff actually takes care of itself, I think, in a lot of ways.
I think if you focus on adding value, if you focus on entertaining people, educating people, sharing your expertise, lifting that curtain, these are all really good approaches to social media content, just as a general rule anyway. But like Christian said, whether it's ultimately the ambition to attract a journalist into your world or to attract a client, it's just about showing up, being consistent with that social media content, and having an open mind about what it could ultimately lead to. But I think whilst that's almost like a reactive way of doing social media, as in like you're putting stuff out there and just seeing what comes to you, what opportunities arrive at your door, you can also be very intentional.
This is one of our top tips,
and strategic about social media, because, for example, a lot of people in our world, for whatever reason feels appropriate to them, they've got ambitions about being in something like Psychology's magazine, or it could be that, you know, you want to be on Good Morning Britain, or you want to be in you know, Cosmopolitan magazine. Whatever is your goal, think if you are clear about what your desired media outlet is that you want to be featured in, a really smart way of working backwards to help make that happen is thinking about, well, who are the reporters, who are the journalists, who are the decision makers who are responsible for putting this publication together, and then actually following them on social media, seeking out their content and starting to engage with it, versus kind of just hoping that somehow the universe will align and they'll stumble across your social media posts. You can actually be proactive and think about, I want to have a relationship with this person with this end goal in mind. So maybe part of my social media routine will be I'll put some time aside each day to just engage on their posts. So that could just be liking their content, or if you've got something to say in response to something they've shared, it might be responding to it, might be you know, retweeting their post, and then you can build up to actually having these conversations. So it's about thinking, my long-term goal is to be in this publication, so what positive daily steps can I take to get me to that destination? In the same way, if you're smart about in-person networking, you might have a short list of people that you're really hoping that you'll bump into at the buffet table, or, you know, have a little bit of a chat with. You can be that strategic about using social media to make it work for you as well.
Absolutely. And just to kind of reinforce that point that Michelle made, there's nothing wrong with doing that. There's nothing, you know, there's nothing.
It's not like Machiavellian.
No, there's nothing bad about doing that. You know, being intentional and actually having a plan is advisable. It really is. You know, you don't always have to worry or think if there is anybody tuning in who has that mindset of thinking, well, I just kind of don't really want to do that because I think people will just come and find me anyway. Yeah, that can happen. Of course it can happen, but it's also okay to give yourself that permission and license to think, well, you know, it's okay for me to maybe do a little bit of the load of the heavy lifting, a little bit of the legwork. I'll go and have a look and see who's in post at this particular outlet, and I'll get to know a little bit more about them. And again, you're not doing that in a way that feels inauthentic, because these things take time. You know, they really do. Relationships take time. Getting to know a person takes time. So as long as you're going into it knowing that there is a level of expectation and commitment from you, just as much as there will be from the person on the receiving end, it becomes a mutual transaction. It becomes something whereby you're in a position to help that person do what they wish to do, which is to write about things and tell stories. And likewise, they're in a position to help you by giving you the visibility and coverage that you're looking for, so that people learn about you as well. So I think, provided that you going in there knowing that there is a relationship to be built, and look at it as an exciting thing to do, something that you can actually really enjoy, then in many respects the world's your oyster. That's what I truly believe.
Yeah, definitely. Like, say for example, you're an accountant, and you know, you have a long-term goal to be an accountancy age, because you recognize that that's the Bible in your industry, and that
And all industries have a Bible.
All industries have a Bible, you know,
that
is relevant to them.
Yeah.
And you think, well, you know, in terms of my credibility, in terms of how my peers will look at me, I think it'd be really advantageous to be in that publication. What you could do is find an article that really truly does resonate with you in an edition of the magazine. Find the name of the journalist who wrote it. You could share a link to the article on LinkedIn, for example, tag the journalist in and say, you know, just read this great article in Accountancy Age. Here's 3 main talking points I took away from it. Really useful piece. You might want to read it too. The journalist can see that you're helping to amplify something they've created.
And you're complimenting them on their work. And that
you're complimenting them on the work, and that their work has been useful to you. And think about how you would feel on the receiving end of that. Wouldn't that be a great starting place for a relationship to grow?
Yeah. And I think, you know, a lot of people sometimes are a bit like, oh yeah, I don't want to be liking or commenting, you know, it feels a bit uncomfortable. But actually, if you put yourselves into the journalist's shoes, if you're liking and commenting on their post, they feel valued, don't they? They actually appreciate that. And if you're tagging them in and sharing their articles, they're going to be really chuffed.
They're going to be buzzing.
Yeah.
I mean, that, you know, that could be a journalist, even if they've been doing it for decades, or even if it's their first ever job. People like to be complimented. You know, people enjoy having their work valued. They like to see, as Michelle said, that people are getting something from it, especially in the world of journalism. I mean, if you're going out there and you've been given a deadline by your editor to get, you know, so many 100 or 1,000 words done by this amount of time, and the level of research that has to go into that article, or the editing that's got to be put into it, all the different nuances that have got to be considered, writing it in a way that's objective as well. There's so many different ingredients that go into an article, whether it's 100 words or 1,000. So when a person then is reading it, or, you know, listening to it, if it's a podcast, whatever the platform is, if you've then got a person commenting on that and giving you something that is really authentic and saying, I took so much away from that, it's actually been a bit of a game changer for me, I'm now going to start thinking about doing it in a different way. Then you go into the additional effort of sharing it to your audience and letting other people know about it. That's going to make that person feel on cloud 9. And whether you've been doing it forever or whether you've been doing it for a couple of months, that feeling never changes. And I think we can all relate to that, can't we? As business owners, as individuals, I think we can all say that it's nice to feel valued.
It feels really good.
It's great for your mental health and great for your well-being. It really is.
And we've noticed as well, like, a trend with a lot of publications now, when we've been pitching story ideas to them, they're coming very much from an SEO perspective. I've even had briefs sent back to me about the headline needs to be this amount of words, and the subdeck needs to cover these keywords, and the content needs to be structured like this because it'll help from an SEO perspective. And they've even said, you need to make sure that this article is shared across your social networks, because depending on how many hits the article gets will impact on whether we recommission you for another feature. So just
full transparency with them, you know.
So we had a client who wanted to kind of get a regular feature in a trade publication relevant to her business. And the editor said, well, we will be checking the analytics of how many people have read your first 3 articles and checking how widely you've shared it on social media. And if we like the stats, then you can have a year-long agreement to be a columnist for us, and that's ultimately what happened.
Yeah, she got the column. Yeah,
but it's interesting to hear that social media considerations are more important than ever for journalists. So if you are that person who's sharing and saying, you know, to your network, look at this, read that, and a journalist can see that, then they, you know, they're going to think, well, if I commission this person or help or bring them in on an article, they'll do that for me and they'll get my story out there. So you can start to see why you become a high value contributor just by being mindful about social media and its usage.
Absolutely. Yeah. It really is a key consideration now.
It is. And that leads me on nicely to do a bit of a plug then for the Social Flock, because obviously I have my membership group where we help businesses to write their social media. We don't do it for you. We actually empower businesses to do it themselves. We teach them some of the things that actually Michelle and Christian have just been talking about. How do we increase reach? How do we increase engagement? But more importantly, what sort of ideas and things like that do we need to put out there to attract not only journalists but customers as well? So yes, thank you for that. If you're interested in joining the Social Flock, do get in touch with me, or you'll find it on my website. The details are just there for you. But obviously we're talking about the press. So Michelle and Christian, how do people get in contact with you? Because you specialize in helping people develop these ideas for the press, specifically develop these articles, and you write them for them, don't you, and things like that. So go on, tell us how people, if they need support with that, tell us how they can get in contact with you.
So
thank you,
Bex. Thank you, Bex. I think let's keep it on topic, shall we? Be social with us.
Yeah.
Come and be social with us over on Facebook. We are right on time. You can see the spelling of our business name underneath. And Bex has very helpfully just put a link into the comments.
Thank you.
Please do connect with us. Myself and Christian are active on LinkedIn. Christian more so than me, I have to say. I need to pull my LinkedIn socks up.
You have to join the Social Flock.
I have to join the Social Flock and get on with it. I'm more of an Instagram gal, I will say. But so you can find us on LinkedIn with our individual profiles. And we do also share and talk about media call outs that we've seen on social media. And we talk about the process of pitching to the press, how to figure out what story ideas you might have, and answer questions on social media about the best way to do those things. So come and get social with us.
Definitely. We love to, as much as we love to ask questions, we really love answering them as well. So, you know, don't be shy in that regard. If you've got something that you want to check, if there's something that you're thinking about, you know, based upon today's conversation as well, let us know. We're always available just to, you know, let people know what we think good looks like, and based upon our own combined experience. I mean, it's like 35 plus years combined between us now.
Yeah, my media career predates social media.
Yeah. So
I used to have to fax ideas.
Fax machines, and I remember dial-up internet and all of that. So yeah, we've been around. We've been around a little bit, but it's important as well that whilst we do harken back to, you know, previous experience of being on the job and that type of thing, it's important that, you know, mentioning SEO and stuff there, that we keep up to date with current trends as well. So do get social with us, get in touch, let us know that you're there, what you're about, you know, what your offering is and what your vision is for what you'd like to do. And we would love to connect with you and see how your journey goes. So all the best to each and every one of you with that as well.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much today, guys. It's been really interesting. I love listening to all your tips and advice. So thank you. So next week there is no live stream. It's half term, so I won't be doing a live stream, but please do come back and join me in 2 weeks' time, where I'll be sharing more tips and advice on social media. And if you've been watching this, please do give us a thumbs up and follow us on social media. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.